Hi, I'm LifeCoachLANDRY, and the topic is, are you stuck in a bad relationship? Is it time to go? Is it over? Is there any coming back from it? Should you just walk away? Basically, this is the divorce of a regular non-married couple relationship. Okay? So there are certain signs that equal relationship paralysis, as it's called in psychology. And it may be that that's happened to your relationship. I'm a big believer in if two people really want to work something out, even if it's been shot for a long time, you can, but it takes a very concentrated effort to do so. So I'm going to read through these things that I've noted and studied on my own, and I came up with 7 of them. Okay, so these are the 7 signs that you're stuck in a relationship that you're not happy with, and it may be time to get out. And at the end, I'll tell you what I would do if you want to stay in. Okay. Number 1 is if you feel chronically unhappy. And a certain amount of strife is normal in your relationship, by the way. But if you feel like you're in a constant state of unhappiness and you can't shake it, it could be a sign of feeling trapped or something you do not want to actually be in anymore. Now, I'm a big, like I said, advocate of make sure you have a conversation about these things before you decide that. Okay, you can be unhappy, but if you're not communicating and trying to resolve them, you obviously will remain unhappy. But if you have communicated and talked about them and nothing's come of it, well, then it may be time to go. 2, if you're sodomizing, if you're convincing and converting emotional stress into physical symptoms, basically, you may be expressing feelings of anxiety, depression through your body. Again, typically what I find in couples that this is happening to is that they're not actually talking. So they're basically internally venting. Well, you can't vent inwards. And when you do that, your body will feel the repercussions. Okay. Number 3 is going to be if you're under constant stress. A little fight now and then is actually healthy for a relationship. And in fact, I recommend it to get stuff out of the way. But unfortunately, for some couples, fighting has become a way of life. Okay. And that can mean a couple things. 1, someone did something wrong and the other can't forgive it or hasn't forgiven it. 2, you're just not happy. 3, the damage is done. 4, you suck at communicating, so nothing is improving. 5, you think you're right too much, too often, and you won't let the other person have their end. Or 6, you don't know what you're doing, ultimately, okay? Unfortunately, like I said, you have to fight to improve of being incapable of resolving their issues together. This also is an intolerance towards separation. Is what you have to possess if you don't want this to happen to you. Constant stress is because you are thinking things that aren't being said out loud. Again, stop venting inward. Okay. Number 4, if you feel controlled by your partner. Okay, there's various forms of control. You might scratch your head going, wait, controlling, what does that mean? Okay. You know that this couple's dynamic. One partner controls the relationship and the other feels controlled. Now, often it's not that a person's usually controlling, it's that incompatible people will feel trapped. If you feel trapped, it may be you're with a person that just doesn't work like you do, so you constantly feel like you can't get anywhere, that you're smothered by the way they operate. Okay? And they may be with someone else and it runs like clockwork and it's a fine old machine when they move on to somebody else. And that can make you go, wait, what? When I was with them, they treated me totally different. No, it's usually not that they treated you different. It's that you didn't agree with the way that they treated you, so you fought against it, which ends up creating a cloud of mistrust and damage and whatnot. Again, a lack of communication usually is why this happens. Okay. And, let's say, for example, you invite this couple over for dinner and the controlling partner decides not to go for a variety of illogical reasons, upset, emotions, doesn't want to be around anybody social. One might think that the controlling partner is free, but in fact, it claims to be a victim of external sources. And the claims might be that controlling partner, but appears that something manipulative is going on or something like that. Controlling is a very overused word in relationships. Often I find that couples are incompatible, not that there's a controlling one. The average person is actually not controlling. Usually controllingness comes from fear, where you feel the need to control the narrative. You need to know every single detail. And usually when you're not a fearful person, you're not controlling. You might be picky, but you're not controlling, right? But if you feel controlled, you might want to look to see if your relationship's incompatible. Number 5, if you constantly fantasize about being with somebody else who gives you everything you want. I'm not necessarily referring to sexual fantasies here. I'm characterizing the man or woman who feels compelled to think that If they were someone else, they wouldn't be as unhappy. The grass is greener all the time. If they were with someone else, they would be getting a lot of the things that they're lacking with you instead of trying to talk with you to change things with you. Okay. Number 6, if you feel lonely with your partner. This is a big one because it said that it's better to be alone than with someone and feel lonely. We all have moments where we feel lonely with our partners because we're not getting what we want at certain times, which lead to fights, which usually get worked out and resolved. And then the loneliness is supposed to come to an end. But if you have prolonged loneliness, you may just be with the wrong person. Okay? Let them know how you feel. But also what's important is when you do this, you listen to how they feel because they may feel the same. And if they do, it may be something you can bridge each other with. Okay? Number 7, if you feel nothing more than an overdeveloped sense of obligation. Basically, if you're only there because you feel like you have to be. You no longer feel like you want to be there because you want to be. Neither you can admit that you no longer in love or care enough to meet each other's needs. You may be connected out of financial obligations or sake of children, or you don't want to break up the marriage or something like that. Not all people are trapped because they need to be a victim of themselves or others to pay off emotional stuff. But you don't have to remain stuck in miserable situations. There are viable ways out of it if only you could take the risk and search for ways to kind of employ the things you need to do. You may fall into your attempt to change, but most of the risk takers that I've encountered have eventually, with patience and perseverance, done one of two things: either found a better life afterwards or fixed what's going on. My advice is, if you feel these 7 things, you need to sit down and talk. But let me tell you something: when you sit down and talk, if you cannot listen, if you're sitting down to vent, cock out of your mouth all over them and just say your piece, you can write that in an email. You can send that in a Facebook message. You can tell them, you can leave a written letter to them, and you can walk away from the relationship. But if you want to work things out, you have to listen and take accountability as well. Okay? Everybody's guilty of doing something wrong. Everybody's lied. All relationships have lies in them. All relationships have things that should have been done better. All relationships have bad communication from time to time. What's so important about relationships is not necessarily that you're fighting. It's about how often, if it's the same talker all the time, and the way you approach each other usually decides whether you're a compatible couple or not. So again, I hope these 7 things help you figure out if you're in a relationship that it's time to walk away from. And if you can't figure that out, or you're still thinking through it, contact me at the link below. And if you have just a comment you want to make so that you can share with others about your experience, leave that below as well. And thanks for watching.